Inflation is at 40-year highs. Gas has doubled since Joe Biden took office. Drag queens are dancing for little kids at gay bars in Dallas. Crime is through the roof in cities around the country. People are pushing back against the Democrats who are running all of these things. But what's worthy of note here is that it's not just us pushing back. It's not just the conservatives and the Republicans. On issue after issue, city after city, all the way up to the federal level, you've got Democrats pushing back against the Democrat ruling class as they see them headed for disaster in the elections. This is Verdict with Ted Cruz.
This episode of Verdict with Ted Cruz is brought to you by Matt Walsh's new film, the new Daily Wire documentary, What is a Woman? I've been waiting for this film since the day Matt announced it, and it does not disappoint. Radical gender ideology is corrupting our nation right now. It's seeping into our children's classrooms as young as kindergarten and preschool. It's even poisoned corporate culture. We see Disney and their queerness agenda that they're inserting into their children's programming. This has become a cultural phenomenon that is assaulting women, that is trying to erase biological women. And so Matt Walsh is fighting this fight. He goes on a world tour asking a very simple question. What is a woman? And fortunately, he took a film crew with him, so we all get to come on this journey with him. And you will be shocked to hear how many people can't answer what you would think is a very simple question. Or they have a very warped, twisted idea of what a woman is. The leftists in this film actually admit to Matt Walsh what their ulterior motive is, what their underlying agenda is. You will laugh, you will cry, you will scream, probably all at once. I highly recommend this film. It's available for Daily Wire subscribers only. Go to whatisawoman.com. whatisawoman.com and join Matt on this cultural battle. Whatisawoman.com.
Today's episode of Verdict with Ted Cruz is brought to you by IPVANISH. Did you know that browsing online using incognito mode doesn't actually protect your privacy? Without added security, you might as well give all your private data away to hackers, advertisers, your internet service provider, and who knows who else. IPVANISH helps you securely and privately browse the internet by encrypting 100% of your data. This means that your private messages, passwords, emails, browsing history, and other information will be completely protected from falling into the wrong hands. IPVanish makes you virtually invisible online. It's that simple. Just for Verdict listeners, IPVanish is offering an insane 70% off their annual plan. That's like getting 9 months for free. You have to go directly to ipvanish.com/cactus to get this 70% off discount. IPVanish is super easy to use. Just tap one button and you're instantly protected. You won't even know it's on. You can use IPVanish on your computers, tablets, and phones. Whether you're at home or in public, don't go online without using IPVanish. Don't forget, Verdict listeners get 70% off the IPVanish annual plan. Just go to ipvanish.com/cactus to claim your discount and secure your online life. That's ipvanish.com/cactus.
This episode of Verdict with Ted Cruz is brought to you by Genucel. How old does your mirror say you are? You can delay this question by 5, 10, even 15 years with Genucel's new Ultra Retinol Serum. You can, see it sitting right here on the desk. Here's a testimonial from Marina. Marina lives in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. She says, great product. My skin loves it. I have spent more money, she says, on creams over the years, enough to pay off my house. Just kidding. But it feels like that. This product has changed my life like no other. Now, Marina is flying high with Genucel's new Ultra Retinol Serum with hyaluronic acid. This works to hydrate your skin at the cellular level. It builds on this deep moisture with incredible anti-wrinkle effects. And gentlemen, you know that we ladies, we wives, use your razors in the bathroom when you are not looking. Likewise, we know that you use our face products, our skincare products, and it's fine. All's fair in love and war. Now, if you go to my URL, that is Genucel.com/cactus, you can get up to 50% off Genucel's new Ultra Retinol Serum. That is 50% off if you go to Genucel.com/cactus. It's spelled GENUCEL.com/cactus. Genucel.com/cactus.
Welcome back to Verdict with Ted Cruz. There is so much to get to, Senator, that I need your thoughts on. But before I get to any of that, did I see you on TV playing poker with some of the best poker players in the world?
You did, and it was one of the coolest things ever. I played in Poker After Dark. So I will say I was like Doyle and Phil, I was giddy about. I was like, this was a bucket list thing. I told my daughters, who are 14 and 11, and they're like, yeah, whatever. Okay, some poker players. What's the big deal? I told them Mr. Beast is going to be there. And my girls lost their minds. They're like, oh, Mr. Beast. So both girls flew to Vegas to meet Mr. Beast. I mean, it was, look, being in the Senate, it's hard to do anything that seems remotely cool to a 14-year-old or an 11-year-old, especially a 14-year-old. But for them to meet Mr. Beast, they thought it was the coolest thing ever. And so I played poker. They put out the first episode. So the game we played for a couple of hours, they chopped it into 3 episodes. So part 1 has come out already, but there'll be 2 more parts, and it was pretty awesome.
Well, I am glad that you could be a cool guy now for your daughters. It's always something you strive for as a parent. You want to seem like a cool guy. I do have this question on poker, though, which is, I know you love poker. I know there have been a number of other politicians and statesmen who have famously loved poker. Is there something about poker that just speaks to a political kind of spirit? What is it about poker that draws you to it? Because you're not the first guy I've known who is so into it.
So poker is people, and it's interesting. You know, you look at you play poker. Poker is math. It's knowing what the odds are. It's knowing what cards you have and what are the odds and how many outs you have. And the math is important. But what I like about poker is it's reading people. And it's trying to understand the person sitting across the table from you. What do they have? Are they telling you the truth or lying? Are they bluffing? So I've got a number of really close friends who enjoy playing poker, and we played poker for years. And one of my closest friends, a guy who was a groomsman at my wedding, is a semi-professional poker player. And he's played multiple times in the World Series. He's actually made a final table at the World Series, not in the main event, but in, I think, the 2000 Texas Hold'em event. And he and I have played a gazillion times. And he's beaten me a bunch of times. I've beaten him a bunch of times. We've spent a lot of hours around the poker table. What's interesting is that he is, in terms of the math, clearly a better poker player than I am. I can do the math, but I don't study it to the level of know it to the precision that he does. I spend much more time reading the players. And so we'll have hands where I'll beat him and he'll be like, what the hell were you doing? That made no sense. Why would you call me there? And my answer is because you didn't want me to. It may not have. It may not have made sense. If you'd had the cards, it would have been a terrible call, but I knew you didn't want me to. You wanted me to lay down my cards, which is why I called you, which is why I took your damn money, so hand me your chips. Right. And look, sometimes you get the read wrong. Sometimes you don't, you think you know what's, and obviously that's part of what makes poker fun is projecting weakness, projecting, you're trying to fool the other players, but I grew up, actually, I learned to play poker as a little kid. My grandmother, my mother's mother, Irish-Italian grandmother, great card player. She played bridge every week for probably 70 years. But she would babysit me when I was a little kid, when I was, 8, 10 years old. My parents would drop me off at my grandparents for them to babysit me. And my grandmother would sit down and taught me to play poker. And she had a metal tin of buttons, and we would play with buttons as chips. And some of the buttons were costume jewelry. It was like fake diamonds. So I'd take the fake diamond and say $1 million. And I just, make up whatever it was, if they looked fancy and were glittery. And I always would win. As a little kid, I would win, and I would win, and I would win. And I felt pretty good about myself. And when I was, about 10 years old, I came and said, hey, Granny, let's play for real money. And she said, okay, sure. And I had $5, which $5 at the time, my allowance was 50 cents a week. So that was 10 weeks allowance that I had.
Yeah, 10
and I sat down and played with her, and she took every penny from me. She wiped me out. My mom came to pick me up, and I was crying as a 10-year-old. I was in tears. And my grandmother's just cracking up laughing. You know, an Irish Italian grandmother saying, "Go on home, sonny. You know, welcome to the big leagues."
2.5 months pay. That's pretty tough.
It got your attention.
That actually makes sense to me, because I have heard people describe it to me that poker, it's not really about the cards. It's not really, as you say, about the numbers. It can be about money. It can be about how people relate to money and risk and threat. And it's really about people. It's about people reading other people. So this actually leads us perfectly into what I really want to talk about today, which is the Democrats who are in power seem to be completely misreading the situation. You've got you've got a lot of blunders, but as I can see it, 3 really, really big prominent blunders they're making right now. On the economic front, not only have they made a lot of poor economic decisions that have hurt the country and certainly their political position, but they're not backing away from them. They're doubling down when it comes to energy. They're doubling down when it comes to so many aspects of the economy. On the cultural, social issues, they're defending drag queens jiggling for kids, actual little tiny children in bars, 21 plus bars in Texas of all places. They're defending it, and then they're coming on crime. They're still so weak on crime, the DAs, the mayors, that you're seeing real significant challenges from the right. In San Francisco, you've got a recall of the district attorney. In Los Angeles now, you've got a big fight for the mayor, and a sort of kind of Republican is posing a big challenge. What the hell are the Democrats thinking?
You know, Michael, it reminds me of, do you remember those videos that would come out every spring break, Girls Gone Wild, and it would have lots of college women in bikinis or not bikinis? It reminds me of much the same thing. This is liberals gone wild. This is the crazy left. This is AOC and Elizabeth Warren, thank God, not in bikinis, but embracing their socialist nuttiness. I mean, it's literally like someone sat down at a bar and said, how much crazy crap can we do? Like, how far can we go to drive away not just the conservatives, that's a given, not even just the moderates, not even just the independents, but what can we do to drive away good old-fashioned liberals who are not nuts?
Yeah. I do want to clarify, Senator, just on the Girls Gone Wild point. I only ever watched that for the articles. You know, I was just really only interested, obviously. But I totally see, I think the analogy is very good. They've gone to extremes and followed their own wildest impulses. So what is going to happen to them in these elections that are really coming up right before us now? You're looking at Los Angeles, you're looking at the recall in San Francisco. It's not Republicans recalling these guys. It's not Republicans who are going to be voting primarily in the LA elections. So what are the elected Democrats going to do? Are they going to moderate, or are they going to get wiped out?
So I don't know what they're going to do this week, but I know what they're going to do in November. They're going to get obliterated in November. It is going to be an historic election. It's every issue is so extreme. Look, there are people, Bill Maher is an old school liberal who they are driving away. Elon Musk has been a Democrat his whole life. They are driving him away, where he said, okay, I'm voting Republican now because these guys are nuts. And yep. You think about it. All right, let's take the drag queen thing. Like, listen, this is not about homosexuality. It's not even about transgenderism. If consenting adults want to do what consenting adults want to do, fine, knock yourself out. But leave the kids alone. I mean, this is not rocket science. Listen, if you had straight women who were strippers, and you had 5-year-olds tucking dollars in their G-strings, you and I would be appalled.
Yeah.
Because kids have no business being sexualized. And it's where, look, this is the radical extreme left, that they want to sexualize little kids. So they're in this gay bar. They've got transgender drag queens where they're tucking dollars in their G-strings. And these are little kids. Like what? It's the whole, the misnamed "Don't Say Gay" law in Florida. What is it with the radical left wanting to teach kindergartners about sex, gay sex, straight sex? How about just no sex for 5-year-olds? That ought to be a really simple rule that only the crazy left doesn't get.
Well, you make a really interesting point here too on strip clubs. If instead of the gay bar with the drag queens wearing skimpy clothing and have kids putting dollars in their various scanty attire, if instead of that you had kids walking into a plain old regular strip club with real women there jiggling around, you would have people calling Child Protective Services in the blink of an eye, as well they should. So I guess in a certain way, it does have a tie-in with the LGBT movement, in as much as there's a complete double standard here. And when it's drag queens doing it, it's celebrated and the parents are taking the kids themselves.
And think how crazy this is, that this is parents taking their kids to this. Like, look, we've discussed how our culture has just become twisted. Like, protecting the innocence of kids ought to be something everyone can agree with. And it's where you're saying, or, let's look at the fact that the DA in San Francisco is facing a recall. Chesa Boudin, or Chisa, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name.
I never know how to pronounce it, yeah.
But he's the son of 2 radical Weather Underground terrorists who were convicted of terrorist bombing. Like literally the DA was raised by convicted terrorists. And he's one of the many George Soros DAs that got elected and decided, I've got a great idea. Let's not prosecute criminals. Let's let violent criminals go. Isn't this a wonderful idea? If we let violent criminals go, we'll be so enlightened. And even the people of San Francisco are saying, what the hell are you doing? Like, we're liberals. We're all for 90% tax rates or whatever it is that they're for. But could you not let murderers wander the streets?
Well, Democrats see that there's that issue, right? So it's not just the Republicans, it's not just the moderates. Democrats are waking up to this. But I do wonder if it's not just that the liberals have gone totally crazy. I mean, maybe they already were crazy, but you saw many decades ago, you would see liberal, leftist, radical theorists writing about all these things, how in order to have true revolutionary change in America, we need to abolish the police. We need to radically redesign the prison systems. They would talk about how we need to sexualize children in order to get rid of all of their old, stodgy, traditional prejudices about sex. For goodness sakes, Bernie Sanders wrote essays about this in the 1960s. Even on the economy, you've had not just the radical theorists, but even Barack Obama, even members of the Obama administration saying we need to increase prices for fossil fuels. We need to create actually some economic hardship, because that's the only thing that's going to motivate people to go in and finally revolutionize the economy. You've seen them talking about this stuff in a way that shows their long-term political goals, which is, to quote Barack Obama, to fundamentally transform America. And I guess I wonder if what you're seeing right now is that those long-term goals are just Democrats getting out a little ahead of their skis here, and there's so much short-term pain and confusion that maybe their own constituents are going to say no.
So, Michael, I'm sorry, I'm still traumatized, because about halfway through what you said there, you invoked Bernie Sanders and sex. And that's just an image I don't need to see. I've got to walk on the Senate floor and see him with his white hair sticking straight up in the air, and I just don't need to. That's an image I could have avoided.
Truly unpleasant, yeah.
Look, it is... All right, let's take gas prices. It is truly amazing watching the corporate press try to bend over backwards to say, none of this is Biden's fault. It's Putin's fault. It's global markets. It's this, it's that, it's the other. Biden literally campaigned saying, I'm going to shut down oil and gas drilling in the United States. I'm going to shut it down on federal lands. I'm going to shut it down offshore. The Green New Deal I'm going to embrace. Biden has implemented literally dozens of policies designed to attack, to hurt, to shut down domestic energy production in the United States. He's done it over and over and over and over again. So he promised he would do it. He's followed through on that promise, and the predicted effect of that is prices have doubled. And by the way, the socialists want prices to double because what they're saying is you, Joe Sixpack, make the decision we don't like. You drive a pickup truck. Mom, maybe you drive a Suburban. Maybe you drive a minivan. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to make your life so miserable that you have to spend $100 or $150 to fill up your car or truck, that you're going to get rid of it and buy a Prius, which is what we want you to do. And so we're going to keep hurting you until you make the enlightened decision that we, your betters, do. By the way, this past week, I don't know if you saw, the EU is putting taxes on fuel, on jet fuel, but they exempted private jets because, of course, they did. This is called the John Kerry exception. These guys are Mr. Burns. They are wealthy, out of touch, living in opulent riches. But then, when they do what they promised they would do, implement policies to hurt domestic energy production, to drive gas prices up, suddenly they discover, wait, people don't like spending $150 to fill up their truck.
Right.
And then they just try to blatantly lie to you.
I'm really hoping that, now that the people are kind of, people of all parties actually are pulling the radicals back from the brink. But I wonder if the radicals and the people who have been in charge have secured those kind of longer-term victories. I look this past week at Joe Biden invoking the Defense Production Act because there is this energy crisis. Energy costs have gone through the roof. Gas has doubled since the man's been president. And so what does he do? Does he invoke that provision of the law or some other provision to open up oil drilling? No. To, I don't know, create a new nuclear power system? No. What is he doing? It's to produce solar panels. It's to give the left what they've wanted for a long time that I don't see any way will actually bring down energy costs, certainly not anytime soon. One, how does he do that? The White House hasn't explained what emergency he's responding to that requires solar panels. But two, are they getting what they want? Are they, as we've heard from which I forget the name of the Emanuel brother. There's Ari and there's Zeke and there's the one that I'm talking about. I can't believe his name escapes me. But one of the worst Democrats in modern politics. Never to let a crisis go to waste. Rahm. There we go. I can't believe I forgot the most famous of the Emanuel brothers' names. I remember the Hollywood one and the doctor one, but not Rahm, saying never let a crisis go to waste. Are they, even as they're losing support, even among their own guys right now, are they scoring those long-term political wins?
So I actually think there are some voices among Democrats, and it wouldn't surprise me if Emanuel is one of them, that is wondering, what in the hell are you people doing? There are people like James Carville, who, right. Listen, James Carville is smart as all get out. He's one of the most effective Democrats. Mary Madeline is his wife. Mary is a friend. She's been a supporter of mine. So I've been to Mary and James's home, and he is an effective adversary. He's a Democrat, but he's not nuts. Yeah. And he's looking at his own party and is like, okay, you people are you trying to lose every congressional race in America? I mean, that's not a quote, but there are definitely. Listen, Bill Maher is an interesting example, and we've talked about. I at some point, I hope we have Bill on this show. I'd never met Bill Maher, but more and more, I'm watching his diatribes and I'm retweeting them. Not because he and I agree. He is an old school liberal, but he does believe in free speech, which the left has abandoned. He recently had a monologue where he was talking about sexuality and the explosion of people that are identifying as other genders and identifying as gay. And he went, through like in history, this was not the case. And we've suddenly had this dramatic shift, which we're not even supposed to talk about. And he raised an interesting point. He said, well, there are big regional differences in, say, California, the number of people who identify as 47 genders, versus in Youngstown, Ohio.
Yeah.
And he said either there's a lot of peer pressure and social pressure in California, or there's a lot of suppression in Ohio, but we had to talk about that there's apparently a fundamental transformational shift of humanity that we're not talking about. And I got to say that, frankly, sounded like something Michael Knowles would say.
Yeah, right.
You got to wonder, is there anyone left in the Democratic Party who can actually talk to a steelworker?
Yeah.
Like they have become this angry, fringe, wealthy, urban, radical elite that is appealing to a smaller and smaller. It's like the Yale faculty.
Yeah.
Is their constituency. And I got to say, thankfully, the country is not the Yale faculty. And it seems that today's Democrats don't get that.
This is actually making me feel a bit better because we tend to spend a lot of time online, and it is true that the boundaries of what is acceptable in society have been basically blown to smithereens. I mean, even 5 years ago, the thought of a little kid going into a drag bar and putting $1, I mean, that would be unthinkable. So because we've seen the limits get blown to smithereens, it's very easy to fall down this pit of despair and say, oh gosh, the country is gone. We might as well give up the fight. But to your point, Senator, they may not be doing this kind of stuff out of confidence, out of a feeling that they've got the wind at their sails. Actually, you might be seeing the kind of defiance you're getting from the administration on the economy, the radicalism on sex and the drag shows, even the defiance on crime and criminal justice. You might be seeing that more out of desperation from Democrats now, who know that perhaps their time in office is going to be dwindling because there's a very large movement, not just of Republicans, but of moderates and some Democrats too, who are ready to throw them out and ready to shift that pendulum back. But I guess we won't. There's a little optimism to leave on. There's a little hope to leave on. But I suppose we won't know until those elections take place.
By the time this pod comes out, the world will know whether Chesa Boudin's been recalled or not. I don't know whether he will be or not. But in some ways, whether he is or not, the point is the same, because the fact that it is real and close and significant is powerful. Even if he ekes out surviving, or I hope is recalled. Los Angeles, there's a vigorous primary for mayor. A few months ago, it was assumed that Karen Bass, the extremely liberal Democrat congresswoman, was a shoo-in. And, now there is at least a vigorously contested primary with a billionaire developer who has been a Republican much of his life. He's running in a Democrat primary just to tip the hat to it.
Yeah, right.
But I got to say, if you're in L.A., look, you fled L.A. I mean, the crime issue, I remember a couple of years ago, I was visiting with a cop in California, used to be an L.A. cop, and he showed me on his phone a picture of a tree in downtown L.A. that was just covered with hypodermic needles. Thousands of needles where the junkies just threw the needles in the trees. And at some point, people say, wait, this is nuts. You look at the beaches where you've got homeless people just allowed to take them over, engage in violence. Listen, you fled L.A. So
yeah.
Why am I telling you about the place you fled? Why did you flee?
Well, for all of those reasons, obviously. Plus, there were the economic reasons, the onerous regulation, all of the constant, tax hikes. And I think the California Franchise Tax Board is basically worse than the mafia at this point. But then there was this basic safety issue. And I will tell you, friends of mine who have fled L.A., not all of my friends in L.A. were conservative. I mean, if that were the case, I'd have very few friends in L.A. because there just aren't that many conservatives. And there were a lot of liberal friends who were making the same comments about crime there. And so people really are getting sick of that stuff. You can see blue places turn on these kinds of issues. You saw it happen in New York in the 90s. You might be seeing that in Los Angeles right now. The very fact that these keep cropping up, these hotly contested elections with lots of momentum behind the center or center-right candidate, that shows you that something is in the air right now. And so I'm not surprised that the Democrats are throwing everything they've got. They're throwing the kitchen sink right now. And I know one way they're trying to distract is they're trying to distract with the January 6th partisan committee in the House. And I also know that our friend Liz Wheeler will be discussing this with you, and specifically the arrest of former Trump aide Peter Navarro on the cloakroom. Isn't that right, Liz?
Hi, Michael. Hi, Senator. First of all, before we even get into that topic, I want to thank you both for that disturbing image of Bernie Sanders that's now burned into my mind for all eternity. Mm-hmm. I listened to this whole episode sitting right with you, and this is what I get in return, is this image of Bernie Sanders.
Just for the record, Liz, that was Michael. That was not me. I was a victim in that imagery as well.
You're welcome.
All right, so we are going to talk about Peter Navarro on Cloakroom. This is a very interesting conversation because it's not just about the January 6th committee. That's obviously partisan. It's obviously a showboat trial, if you will. I mean, they hired an ABC News executive to produce it, to make it a primetime event here. But the arrest of Peter Navarro itself is a constitutional question because what he claimed was executive privilege, that he couldn't testify because this was not his information to give, that it was actually President Trump's information to either divulge or claim executive privilege. And there's a very interesting constitutional question about whether it's even legal for Congress to have indicted him without the court intervening. And we are going to dive into the details of that today. You can join us, of course. We invite you to. We hope you will. Over on verdictwithtedcruz.com/plus. That is the Verdict Plus community. If you use my promo code, which is Cloakroom, intuitively, it makes sense, you can get your first month free on your annual subscription. That is verdictwithtedcruz.com/plus.
I cannot wait to watch. But in the meantime, I've got to say goodbye. I'm Michael Knowles. This is Verdict with Ted Cruz.
This episode of Verdict with Ted Cruz is being brought to you by Jobs, Freedom, and Security PAC, a political action committee dedicated to supporting conservative causes, organizations, and candidates across the country. In 2022, Jobs, Freedom, and Security PAC plans to donate to conservative candidates running for Congress and help the Republican Party across the nation.
If you like this video, you should click the like button, and then you should subscribe, and you should ring the bell, and you will never miss another video.